While others experience youth filled with school, passion, sports, and inspiration, the female protagonist of this story takes a different path. While others smoothly sail over mountains, she heads straight for a massive iceberg. Tamaki is a high school sophomore. One day, upon waking up, she discovers notes from her middle school days listing several dreams: to skip school once and to embark on a purposeless journey. Inspired, Tamaki shares her bold ideas with her best friend Takahashi, expressing her desire to skip school for a day and then head to Tokyo for fun. Takahashi comments that skipping school is easy, and it's quite rare for someone Tamaki's age to have never missed a class before. Takahashi thinks skipping class once to fulfill a dream is fine, but decides not to accompany Tamaki, as such things should be experienced alone for a true sense of ceremony. She also offers to cover for Tamaki with their parents and teachers. Consequently, Tamaki packs her bags and leaves home early the next day, with Takahashi ready to provide an alibi. However, she ends up in the classroom again. Dreams are beautiful, but the weather was not cooperating. Takahashi sees this as just making excuses. Tamaki sighs, realizing she always backs out at critical moments, afraid of failing when trying something new. She dislikes this aspect of her personality. Takahashi doesn't pressure her but advises her to think it through. On her way home, Tamaki sees another girl in the same school uniform sprinting away, dropping an envelope from her bag. Tamaki picks it up and chases after her, but the girl boards a vehicle before she can catch up. Tamaki opens the envelope to find it stuffed with cash. Counting it, she discovers it contains 1 million yen, roughly equivalent to 60,000 yuan, leaving her shocked. Since the uniform was from the same school, Tamaki decided to look for the owner at school, remembering that she was a long-haired beautiful girl with a distinctive scent. While searching, Tamaki caught a whiff of that familiar fragrance and followed it to see a black-haired girl rushing into the restroom. Tamaki hurried after her and heard the girl angrily pounding on the stall wall, obviously upset about the lost 1 million yen, a reaction anyone would have. After a good cry, the girl came out of the stall. Tamaki, feeling nervous, nevertheless pulled out the envelope from her book. The girl grabbed Tamaki's shoulder, startling her, but Tamaki quickly explained that she hadn't stolen it. She found it at the station the day before. Overwhelmed by the turn of events, once she calmed down, Kobuchizawa told Tamaki that her mother had been an observer with an Antarctic expedition team, but had gone missing when Kobuchizawa was in middle school. Her mother left behind only a book, with no other belongings or body found. Therefore, Kobuchizawa had been saving money to go to Antarctica to search for her mother. Everyone around her argued it was unnecessary to go to Antarctica, as it was too expensive and dangerous for a child. However, Kobuchizawa wanted to prove she could make it, so she had started working part-time since entering high school and had finally saved enough money. Tamaki greatly admired Kobuchizawa's determination and discussed it with Takahashi, who mentioned that Kobuchizawa was quite famous at school. During their conversation, Hinata, a girl who worked at a convenience store, eavesdropped. Takahashi, like others, was skeptical about Kobuchizawa's decision, with many considering her odd. Inspired by Kobuchizawa's resolve, Tamaki researched Antarctica and was thrilled by its stunning landscapes. Just then, she saw Kobuchizawa walking by the school and wanted to ask her about Antarctica, but noticed Kobuchizawa being harassed by a school bully demanding money. Tamaki quickly intervened, claiming a teacher was looking for Kobuchizawa, which made the bully leave. Tamaki told Kobuchizawa that she had always wanted to do something significant since high school, but failed due to her timidity. She supported Kobuchizawa's dream and admired her disregard for others' opinions, and wanted to help her. Unexpectedly, Kobuchizawa asked if Tamaki would like to join her on the trip to Antarctica, explaining that others had initially supported her too, but they were just high school students and soon gave up. Kobuchizawa then invited Tamaki to see the ship in Hiroshima. That night, Tamaki had trouble sleeping. The next day, Tamaki's sister tried to wake her, but found that her usually late-rising sister had uncharacteristically left home early. Despite feeling fearful and contemplating giving up, Tamaki thought that even being pushed forward to see unfamiliar sights was worth it. Kobuchizawa was excited to see Tamaki show up, and together, they went to see the icebreaker ship. Traveling from Japan to Antarctica, covers a distance of 1,400 kilometers, which is further than traveling to space. Therefore, Kobuchizawa explained to Tamaki that to reach Antarctica, one must first travel to Fremantle, then take a ship to Antarctica. On the return trip, they would fly back from Sydney. To get to Antarctica, one needs to board an icebreaker, which is typically manned by Antarctic researchers as part of a national project, requiring crew members to undergo specialized training. Normally, ordinary high school students could not participate. However, this year is different, as there is an option to join a civilian observation team. Moved by Kobuchizawa's passion, Tamaki decided to look for a part-time job, as saving money is essential for their travel, and she would also need to take a leave of absence from school, necessitating a higher attendance rate beforehand. Takahashi, upon hearing about their plan, investigated the civilian observation team mentioned by Kobuchizawa and found concerning details. Due to a lack of funding, the civilian team had not made a trip to Antarctica in 3 years. Therefore, Takahashi was not very hopeful about their plan. Tamaki turned to discuss the issue with Kobuchizawa, as it was still uncertain whether they could board the ship with the civilian observation team. Kobuchizawa sensed Tamaki's hesitation and worried that it indicated a lack of desire to proceed, possibly leading to a failed plan. The two nearly argued, but eventually both backed down. Tamaki wanted to take a leap with Kobuchizawa, but desired a smooth plan rather than one that might fail midway. Tamaki decided to trust Kobuchizawa and also found a job at a convenience store, the same one where Hinata worked. Hinata, who was the same age as Tamaki, guessed that Tamaki might be planning to go to Antarctica and decided to join them. She met with Kobuchizawa and expressed her desire to go to Antarctica. Kobuchizawa explained that the trip would be self-funded and risky, and even require taking a break from school. Hinata revealed she wasn't attending high school, but had already passed her university entrance exams and planned to study independently while working, before eventually attending university. Since her senior year was approaching, she wanted to add a significant experience to her youth before focusing on her studies. Thus, Tamaki and Hinata got along well. Kobuchizawa was indifferent, but made it clear that they had to follow her lead. Tamaki and Hinata reviewed Kobuchizawa's strategic plan and understood its challenges. However, they acknowledged that Kobuchizawa knew Antarctica better than they did, so they decided to give it a try. Hinata, who disliked the cliquey atmosphere at school, had opted not to attend high school, choosing instead to work and study independently. But when she saw Tamaki and Kobuchizawa arguing in the convenience store, she found their honesty with each other refreshing and different from typical high school students, which made her want to befriend them and pursue her own dreams. However, the plan was quite abstract. One evening, the three of them went to Kabukicho, where they discovered the observation team socializing. Pretending to be college students, they approached, intending to single out a team member for a conversation. But they were spotted by a female team member who recognized Kobuchizawa immediately. Kobuchizawa quickly told Tamaki and Hinata to run, and the three sprinted away joyfully, feeling alive with the thrill of youth. However, they got overly excited and collided, getting caught by the observation team. The female team members warned Kobuchizawa not to take shortcuts and noted the dangers due to her young age. They emphasized that even for the civilian observation team, a certain level of physical fitness was required. Undeterred, Kobuchizawa showed them the money she had saved over the years, insisting she must go to Antarctica no matter what, to see her mother one last time, motivated by the last message she received from her. Despite their concerns about the risks, the two team members, who had been teammates of Kobuchizawa's mother, took special care of Kobuchizawa. They were present during her mother's disappearance 3 years ago and chose not to accept Kobuchizawa's financial offer. Instead, they brought in new investors. Hinata worried that Kobuchizawa might be discouraged, especially after she angrily refused the money. But Kobuchizawa had not given up on her Antarctica dream and was not removed from her leadership role by Hinata, despite the setback. Hinata began researching cases of high school girls traveling to Antarctica. Initially, there were none. But soon a new story broke. A civilian observation team was taking a high school girl, a celebrity named Yuzuki, to Antarctica for a broadcast. Kobuchizawa, upon hearing this, was eager to contact Yuzuki's studio, revealing her mother had been an Antarctic observer and asking if she could join the expedition, though she was somewhat shy about it. Hinata was ready to make the call, but unexpectedly, Yuzuki came to them first. Yuzuki, who had debuted as a child star at age 5 and had a hit single last year, expressed her reluctance to go to Antarctica. Born in Hokkaido, a very cold region, she was not keen on visiting an even colder place like Antarctica. She and her mother, Shirase, had been at the social event the previous day and heard about Kobuchizawa. Yuzuki then asked Kobuchizawa to go to Antarctica in her place, which Kobuchizawa gladly accepted. At that moment, Yuzuki's mother, who also acted as her agent, arrived and stated that such a job couldn't be casually handed over. Although Kobuchizawa was attractive, she wasn't particularly articulate. Hinata could live stream, but wasn't photogenic. Shirase left with Yuzuki, who was very disappointed. She wanted to make friends in high school but couldn't because her child star commitments left her no time to play with friends. Reluctant to go, Yuzuki was approached by Shirase, who told Kobuchizawa that if she could persuade Yuzuki, she would recommend all three to accompany the expedition. However, adult promises can be unreliable, and a recommendation didn't guarantee they would go. Still, the trio was excited. Kobuchizawa was eager to convince Yuzuki to change her mind, while Hinata felt it was too impulsive. Yuzuki had her reasons for not wanting to go, which needed to be understood first. Kobuchizawa calmed down and went to see Tamaki the next afternoon. Meanwhile, Takahashi had been wanting to ask Tamaki out, but she was preoccupied with the Antarctica trip and didn't notice her own feelings of loss. The three of them met with Yuzuki, who guessed they were likely sent by her mother to persuade her. While doing her homework, she explained that due to her early start as a child star at age 4, she had never had friends. She had hoped to make some in high school to sing and shop with. Though she took the first step, her work continuously got in the way. Tamaki, feeling empathetic, hugged Yuzuki and shared how tough the new school term had been. Yuzuki noted that the three seemed to be close friends despite having met just a month ago and never having hung out. Their common goal was simply to go to Antarctica. Yuzuki was taken aback, realizing that friendships could function in such a way. The trio escorted Yuzuki back to her hotel. Though unsure if they had persuaded her, Yuzuki seemed much cheerier. She felt a bit embarrassed later, as it was the first time someone had embraced her like that. That night, Yuzuki dreamt that Tamaki and the others climbed through her window to take her to Antarctica. Excitedly, she agreed, only for them to all tumble out of the window together. Yuzuki woke up to find herself having rolled off the bed. The two friends she had recently made had left the group chat because she kept missing meetups. Just as Yuzuki was feeling down, she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, Tamaki and the others were there, offering to accompany her to work in Tokyo and discuss the Antarctica trip. Yuzuki began to cry, and the trio scrambled to comfort her. For the first time having friends by her side, Yuzuki made up her mind, called her mother, and said if the three were willing to accompany her, she would go. Subsequently, the four visited a museum related to Antarctica and even went to see the aurora borealis, taking photos together. Tamaki mused that if they could make it to Antarctica, they might be the first high school students to see the aurora there. Tamaki and the others received a training schedule for the Antarctic expedition. No one at school believed they could actually go to Antarctica, and Kobuchizawa didn't bother explaining to them. Only by actually arriving in Antarctica could they dispel all rumors. However, taking a leave of absence to go to Antarctica required parental consent. Still, Tamaki and Kobuchizawa had secretly signed the necessary papers. When Tamaki's mother learned about the Antarctica trip, she came out smiling with kitchenware in hand. As Tamaki rushed to the front door, her father opened it, saw his wife's mischievous smile, mourned for his daughter for 3 seconds, and then shut the door. It was clear they were her real parents. Eventually, her mother agreed but demanded that Tamaki pass all her subjects. Even so, Tamaki agreed, balancing her study revisions with the training for the trip and her part-time job. Meanwhile, Takahashi remained worried that despite Tamaki's efforts, she might still not be able to go to Antarctica. Tamaki has already grabbed her bag and gone to meet her teammates. Hinata criticizes her for having so much time, yet struggling with her studies, which she finds odd. Soon, the group waits for the training team's vehicle. The four of them are to undergo training with the civilian observation team. But the vehicle looks very old, and not at all like what they expected from a professional team. However, this is normal for a civilian team. The driver, Kanai, assures them not to worry about the Antarctic expedition, as the budget will definitely be approved. But they need to save money where possible. During this time, the four must catch up on a lot of lessons because Antarctica is uninhabited, but hosts various countries' observation teams, so the living standards and rules are different. They must remember these details. The person teaching them is the captain of this civilian observation team, Tudu, a very capable woman. Besides training, the four are also responsible for various chores for the team. Captain Tudu remembers Kobuchizawa well. She was close friends with Kobuchizawa's mother. Seeing her friend's daughter rejoin the team is quite moving for Tudu. The next day, Tamaki and her team began practical training. Since Antarctica is a vast, white plain, it becomes difficult to distinguish directions when it snows and the wind blows. The team needed to learn how to plant flags to mark locations. Finding directions required professional equipment, given that magnetic forces at the poles can be unreliable. They had to measure distances by foot and then place flags according to a compass. The coordination between the four was quite good, which relieved Tudu and Kanai. That night, the four zipped themselves into sleeping bags inside their tent. Unable to help herself, Tamaki started to chat as soon as they lay down. Girls tend to do that. She also noticed that Kobuchizawa seemed to know Tudu. Kobuchizawa didn't hide it and shared that Tudu was her mother's high school classmate and they had gone to Antarctica together, but only Tudu returned. Tamaki wanted to comfort Kobuchizawa, but Hinata held her back, sensing it was a sensitive topic. Instead, the three made space for Kobuchizawa to have some alone time while they went outside to stargaze. They received a routine call from Kane and quickly returned to the tent to sleep. The next day, Tamaki woke up in her sleeping bag, groggily crawled out of the tent, and found Tudu sitting on a distant rock, admiring the scenery. Seeing Tamaki awake, Tudu pulled her up onto the rock. Together, they watched the clouds over the mountaintops. Tamaki suddenly asked Tudu what Kobuchizawa's mother was like. Tudu replied that Kobuchizawa was much like her mother. Both were somewhat strange but very determined people. Tudu initially thought Tamaki was just accompanying Kobuchizawa, but Tamaki explained that Kobuchizawa was the opportunity, yet the decision to go was her own. She wanted to mark her youth with a perfect symbol, and after hearing about Tudu and Kobuchizawa's past, she felt compelled to go to Antarctica. Afterward, Tamaki woke up the other three, and they all watched the sunrise together, vowing to make the trip to Antarctica. The news of two high school students planning to go to Antarctica caught the attention of their school. The school had them give a speech on stage, and they secretly high-fived each other. However, Takahashi was somewhat unhappy below the stage. In her view, she had always guided and cared for Tamaki, acting more like an older sister. Tamaki and her group began recording transition videos, as they were nominally joining Yuzuki for a variety show. Consequently, their itinerary changed, and they needed to fly to Australia for a layover. After filming the transition video, they discussed how to pack their luggage. Since they were going to be in Antarctica for 3 months, they had a lot to bring. Tamaki packed a lot of items, but her mother and sister deemed most of them unnecessary. Her sister helped her sort out some of the luggage, advising Tamaki to ask Kobuchizawa what essentials to bring to Antarctica. Tamaki continued organizing her luggage. Tamaki found the game console Takahashi had lent her under the bed. She had thought it was lost because she couldn't find it before. Now that she found it, she immediately went to play with Takahashi. It had been a while since they last met. Takahashi asked about Tamaki's recent schedule. Feeling conflicted, she hoped Tamaki would explore the world, yet also wanted her to stay, fearing that Tamaki becoming too successful might distance her. Amid these mixed emotions, she accidentally kicked the game console Tamaki was playing. As Tamaki was happily preparing her luggage for Antarctica, her class organized a farewell party for her. Tamaki gave Takahashi a playful smile, and Takahashi smiled back. However, during a private conversation, Takahashi's tone changed. She warned Tamaki to be cautious, as there were rumors at school claiming they were stealing and working in Kabukicho to fund their trip. She expressed concern about potential issues when they returned. Just then, Kobuchizawa and Hinata arrived, and Tamaki told Kobuchizawa about the rumors. Kobuchizawa was furious and insisted on finding the rumor monger. Hinata advised her not to dwell on it, warning that trying to prove themselves could lead to a vicious cycle. She urged not to meet malice with malice, as it would only cause endless internal conflict. However, they could now discuss these issues together. Still angry, Kobuchizawa wanted to scream to vent her frustration. So Hinata suggested they go to karaoke. Tamaki invited Takahashi, and they all vented vigorously at the KTV. Yuzuki, seeing the photos later, felt relieved she hadn't joined them. Tamaki and Takahashi walked home together. Tamaki mentioned that since deciding to go to Antarctica, she hadn't spent much time with Takahashi. She admitted she used to rely heavily on Takahashi for encouragement to move forward and disliked her indecisive self. However, this time she had taken the initiative on her own. Takahashi had a complex expression, seemingly lost in thought. After returning home, Tamaki's parents treated her to a big meal, and she rested all night. In the morning, she said goodbye to her room. Her parents and younger sister were very worried and sad about her departure. As Tamaki was stepping out to start her journey, Takahashi suddenly appeared and shockingly declared she wanted to end their friendship right before Tamaki was about to leave. It turned out Takahashi was the source of the rumors. She had been waiting for Tamaki to find out, as the only person Tamaki had discussed her Antarctica and Kobuchicho plans with was Takahashi. Even the fact that Tamaki's mother knew about the Antarctica trip came from Takahashi. Yet, Tamaki had never suspected her. Takahashi felt conflicted, realizing she was jealous of Tamaki's courage to go to Antarctica and her close relationship with Kobuchizawa. After their conversation the previous day, Takahashi recognized that it was she who truly depended on Tamaki. Without portraying herself as reliable and encouraging Tamaki, she felt she would have nothing. Unable to move forward herself and acting out of jealousy, Takahashi admitted to spreading the rumors and chose to end the friendship, hoping Tamaki would no longer be held back by her. Tamaki burst into tears, hugged Takahashi tightly, and invited her to join her in Antarctica, but not right now. She declared the end of their friendship invalid and decided to discuss the rest when she returned from Antarctica. Then, Tamaki rushed to the airport. After arriving at the airport, everyone went through customs and then boarded the plane. Once the flight stabilized, Tamaki and Kobuchizawa started playing games and watching movies. Soon, Tamaki fell into a deep sleep and missed the dessert served after the meal. This flight was from Japan to Singapore, where they would catch a connecting flight. They had a day to spare before the next flight, so after storing their luggage and valuables at the hotel, they quickly went out to explore. However, just before leaving, Hinata checked her pocket and realized something was missing, but she didn't tell the others. The group spent the entire day sightseeing and enjoyed Singaporean cuisine and ice cream. Both Kobuchizawa and Tamaki were stunned by the durian ice cream. They played until the evening when Hinata suddenly asked Yuzuki if she had checked her passport at customs. Yuzuki nodded, saying it was in her backpack. Hinata then relaxed, thinking the passport must have been misplaced. Unaware of the gravity of the situation, Hinata didn't grasp the potential complications. The group went to the rooftop to enjoy the view. Tamaki felt emotional, reflecting on how 6 months ago, she couldn't have imagined traveling to such a distant place as Antarctica. Now, she had already taken the first step by leaving her country. While Tamaki and the others were reflecting on life, Hinata checked her backpack again. Yuzuki suspected Hinata was hiding something, and sure enough, when asked, it turned out the passport was missing. After returning, Hinata couldn't find her passport in her luggage, and initially wasn't too concerned. However, when she learned that without a passport, she couldn't go to Antarctica or return to Japan, she was shocked. Fortunately, a passport can be replaced at the embassy, but the issue is that it takes at least half a day, and the embassy is closed on weekends. Coincidentally, the next day was Sunday. Kobuchizawa worried they might not catch up with the monitoring team's departure if they had to rebook. That evening, Hinata told Kobuchizawa that the other three could go ahead, and she would try to get a new passport. If she couldn't make it, she would simply return to Japan. Kobuchizawa felt regretful, as she tends to get agitated when plans are disrupted. However, Hinata felt the responsibility was hers, since she was the one who lost her passport. She hadn't given up on going to Antarctica. She might just arrive later and didn't want to hold the others back because of her issue. That night, Hinata and Kobuchizawa shared a room. Hinata felt guilty, acknowledging that Kobuchizawa was being considerate of her feelings. Hinata admitted she was not good at dealing with such situations, fearing others' worries and concerns, which was why she didn't attend high school. Her straightforward personality made it difficult for her to interact with others. For instance, today's issue was her fault, yet Kobuchizawa had to consider her feelings. Kobuchizawa tried to explain that she wasn't just considering Hinata's emotions, but Hinata felt Kobuchizawa should prioritize her dream of going to Antarctica. Kobuchizawa didn't respond and just went to sleep. The next day, Kobuchizawa turned off Hinata's alarm and went to the airport with the other two teammates, planning to rebook their flight for 2 days later after replacing the passport. The airport staff said their tickets were budget and couldn't be changed last minute. Kobuchizawa then pulled out 1 million yen, ready to pay extra for the rebooking. Hinata thought Kobuchizawa was being too stubborn, but Kobuchizawa said she had been that stubborn for 3 years to make it to Antarctica. She didn't want to leave Hinata behind. Since they had planned to go as a group of 4, they must all depart together. Then she asked, "Aren't you guys going to ask the airport if they found a passport?" In the end, the 1 million yen was used to repurchase 4 tickets. However, just as Kobuchizawa was about to put the tickets into her backpack, she discovered something horrifying inside: Hinata's passport. It turned out that when they were leaving the airport, Hinata's shoelace came undone, and she asked Kobuchizawa to hold her passport. Kobuchizawa thought it was too risky to hold the passport in her hand, so she casually put it in her pocket. Kobuchizawa initially tried to brush it off with a joke, but the sharp Yuzuki already sensed something was amiss. In the end, both were punished by having to eat durian. Fortunately, the passport was found, and the tickets were refunded. The original budget tickets were still valid, and the departure date remained unchanged. Before the civilian survey team departed, reporters interviewed the team leader, Tudu. Yuzuki and Kobuchizawa also reshot the transition landing video. Yuzuki was quite skilled at this, being a child star. Kobuchizawa, nervous, couldn't complete her lines smoothly. Hinata had written the script for her. They were to board an icebreaker named Penguin Manju. The 4 were assigned to the same room. Since the rooms on the ship were quite similar, they needed to remember their room number in advance. Kanai told them that the ship would sway after departure, so the cabinets in the rooms were locked and required some skill to open. Also, they were advised not to step on the door thresholds as they need to remain sealed. Stepping on them too much could cause deformation. The luggage sent earlier was already placed in their room on the ship, and it would later be moved to the Antarctic base. Yuzuki thought the ship would be very shaky after setting sail, so she decided to finish recording their video before departure. Yuzuki overheard the captain commenting on their survey team's snowmobiles, implying they were outdated for a civilian survey team. Ultimately, Yuzuki took over the interview and specifically visited Tudu. The team's mission was to return to a base that had been inactive for 3 years and restore it to full operational status. Kobuchizawa removed a label from her head that read, "Useless." The captain remarked that this trip's ship was quite large, hinting that the civilian survey team was understaffed and had attracted little sponsorship. Kanai and her team were overwhelmed, so they sent Tamaki and the others to purchase supplies. At the port, the store manager told them that other ships typically filled an entire container with supplies, but their team was only buying a little at a time, clearly indicating a lack of funds and insufficient team members. Yuzuki, always perceptive, felt something was off about the atmosphere on the ship, and she sensed significant underlying issues. The 4 were worried about whether they could successfully reach Antarctica. They feared they might have to retreat midway due to insufficient funds. Kanai told them not to worry. Even though they currently lacked sufficient funding and supplies, they had already decided to go, and they would definitely reach Antarctica. Safety measures were in place. Most importantly, all members participating in this expedition had a strong determination to go. The world at -10 degrees is harsh, with blizzards and strong UV rays that can harm the body, but they had been preparing for this for 3 years. At this point, they would not give up. The main purpose of this trip was to observe the sky. However, Yuzuki still felt that the adults were hiding something, so the group decided to disguise themselves and gather information. They discovered that the crew was indeed discussing the feasibility of reaching Antarctica, and they seemed confident. Yet, through these discussions, the 4 suspected that the survey team might have other plans they were not aware of. Unable to find more information, they decided to head back to their room to rest. Kanai had previously mentioned that this room was once occupied by Kobuchizawa's mother, but during the day, they had not noticed any traces left by her. Only at night, lying in bed, did they discover glowing stars painted under the bed. Could this be related to Kanai's mention of observing the sky? Kobuchizawa's mother had written in her book that the Antarctic night sky is a precious treasure. She went out to glance at the astronomical telescope. Tudu approached Kobuchizawa and told her that when Kanai learned that Japan's old Antarctic base was being transferred to a civilian organization, Kobuchizawa's mother decided to lead the first civilian survey team to occupy the old base. They gathered significant investment to set up an observatory in Antarctica to gaze at the stars. They successfully reached Antarctica, but the three were so eager to achieve results that Kobuchizawa's mother disappeared in a blizzard. Subsequently, the sponsoring companies, concerned about their reputations, began withdrawing their funding. However, Tudu and Kanai always remembered their promise. No matter how many years it took, they were determined to return to the spot where Kobuchizawa's mother disappeared and look at the stars again. Most of the team members aboard the ship returned with this same determination. Some even had no plans for their lives after this trip back to their homeland, but they came anyway. Kobuchizawa's mother liked to leave footprints in unexplored snowy areas. As her friend, Tudu decided to continue the journey she couldn't finish. Tamaki and the others were brought up to introduce themselves. After all, it was the first time high school students were heading to Antarctica. Kobuchizawa's presence silenced many crew members, as they all knew about her mother's sacrifice and feared it might bring back painful memories. Encouraged by Hinata, Kobuchizawa spoke about her intention to produce the best report on Antarctica and retrace her mother's path. Although she blushed, she still expressed her thoughts. Before they left, Kanai had them enjoy the warmth of the ground, mentioning that it would be a long time before they experienced such sunshine again. Soon after, the ship began its journey, and everyone took photos together. Then, Kobuchizawa and her group started recording their video. After leaving the port, the ship was very shaky at sea. Tamaki and the others went to interview other crew members. Kobuchizawa, serving as the temporary host, was nervous and stuttered on camera, sometimes even pushing the microphone too close to people's faces. Besides filming, the four also helped prepare food. Tamaki regretted not bringing a peeler as she struggled with a small knife to peel potatoes, thinking she should have ignored her sister's advice not to bring one. It probably wouldn't have passed customs anyway. At that moment, an announcement over the intercom stated that the sea was calm, and they could go up on deck. After dealing with the potatoes, the cook took them to the deck for a run. Given that they would be working in the harsh conditions of -10 degrees in Antarctica, maintaining physical fitness was crucial. Thus, they began exercising by running around the ship, though they could not match the stamina of the professional crew. Completing a lap around the large deck was exhausting, not to mention lifting weights and doing sit-ups back in their room. Since fresh water was scarce on the ship, the four decided to bathe together. Yuzuki and Kobuchizawa hesitated about cutting their hair, but Tamaki offered to help, mentioning she always cut her own bangs. This revelation solved a puzzle that had been on their minds. They had always wanted to comment on how abstract Tamaki's bangs looked, not realizing she had been styling them herself. Afterward, an announcement over the intercom called them to eat. The four rushed to the dining hall to quickly finish their meal, then went to collect other team members' clothes and wash them in the laundry. Just as they finished this task, the seasickness medication they had taken before setting sail wore off, and all four of them were laid flat. Kanai told the four to continue taking seasickness medication, and reminded them to eat after taking the pills. No matter how sick they felt, they needed to eat to avoid ending up on IV nutrition. To avoid being laid flat again, the four gritted their teeth and ate another meal, but ended up vomiting it out. When the captain announced that they could go out to run, the cabin was still shaking. They struggled to crawl up to the deck. Running was out of the question, but standing outside in the wind helped them feel a bit better. Tamaki joined the crowd to watch whales, but almost vomited from the motion. At that moment, Kanai informed them that they were about to enter a new sea area and that they must secure their luggage. Otherwise, the shaking could throw cabinets up to the ceiling. The most severe shaking could reach 60 degrees. The seasickness they had experienced so far was just an appetizer. The shaking in the new sea area would be like hell. For the seasoned crew members, this kind of shaking was like a battle. But for Tamaki and her group, it was sheer hell. Maybe you should check on Yuzuki. She looks like she's dying." Tamaki climbed down from her bed. Yuzuki began to question her life choices, wondering why she had come here, especially since they were much weaker compared to the other crew members. However, Tamaki felt that coming to Antarctica was her choice, and making that choice was already a change. Hinata was moved by Tamaki's words and also climbed down from her bed, not to exercise, but to vomit in the toilet. After all four had finished vomiting, they resolved to pull themselves together and decided to tell their friends and family back home that the observation ship was incredibly intense. Don't ask. Just don't let anyone be fooled alone. The four also bravely opened the cabin door to peek at the deck. By the time they had gathered their spirits, the toughest part of the sea journey was over. They could now see icebergs from the deck. There was to be a jump rope competition on the ship. Tamaki and Hinata were determined to win first place. Yuzuki was not interested, but Kobuchizawa's eyes were on the cake Todo was holding. At that moment, a male crew member, Toshio, approached Kobuchizawa and blurted out a confession of liking her, startling all four of them. It turned out that Toshio had feelings for Captain Todo. The cook thought he was crazy. He liked Todo because he felt very safe around her, believing she could protect him well. The cook mocked Toshio, reminding him that he had once said that relationships should not happen on the ship, yet he had fallen for someone himself. The reason Toshio approached Kobuchizawa was that he heard she knew Todo, though they weren't very close. Yuzuki thought this would make a great story for their broadcast and could potentially increase the popularity of their video. Upon hearing this, Toshio worried that his feelings would be exposed to the world. However, the four had no intention of reporting on him. Kobuchizawa's only memory of Todo was from when she was in kindergarten. Her mother had to leave her in the care of Todo, who was visiting their home at the time. Kobuchizawa remembered Todo as being very serious. So the three decided to let Kobuchizawa interview Todo. They planned to start with a general interview and subtly shift the topic to romantic relationships, curious about the charming female captain's love life. Meanwhile, Kanai was discussing Kobuchizawa with Todo. Todo remembered more about Kobuchizawa's mother than Kobuchizawa herself. Todo had no children of her own, and Kanai informed her that Kobuchizawa's mother was no longer alive. Todo knew Kobuchizawa's mother well, and Kanai suggested that she should share some memories of her mother with Kobuchizawa when she had the chance. Kobuchizawa actually felt guilty towards Todo. After all, it was she who had ordered the cessation of the search for her mother's body. Kanai initiated the conversation, and Tamaki and the other two girls burst into the office for the interview. Kobuchizawa, unsure how to interact with Todo, chose not to attend. The three high school girls were not easy to handle with their gossip, and even made Todo blush with their questions. Eventually, Todo said she liked people who were like clouds. Toshio was confused by this, but Kobuchizawa understood what Todo meant. Clouds, though intangible, are always there. The girls suddenly realized the meaning, while Toshio remained clueless. The captain also tried to counsel Todo, noting that Todo felt Kobuchizawa had not forgiven her. The captain suggested they talk it out. By this time, the ship had reached near Antarctica. Todo and Kobuchizawa walked to the railing together, astonished by the penguins below. In fact, Kobuchizawa's mother used to leave her alone with Todo frequently. Back then, Kobuchizawa would often hit herself while jumping rope. Todo sought a private conversation with Kobuchizawa, while Tamaki and the others hid nearby to eavesdrop. However, Kobuchizawa did not hate Todo. Her mother had acknowledged the dangers of exploring Antarctica when she boarded the ship, but had resolved to go anyway. She had done extensive research and knew well the risks involved. As the captain, Todo had to make the prioritized decision. Logically, Kobuchizawa knew she couldn't hate Todo, but emotionally, it felt different. Thus, Kobuchizawa was confused about her own feelings and had been avoiding Todo. After her mother's disappearance, Kobuchizawa's life remained unchanged, yet she waited every day for her mother's return. As years passed without her return, Kobuchizawa decided to set foot on Antarctica herself. By this time, the ship had begun to break the ice. Tamaki and her group watched in awe as the icebreaker charged up the ice shore, crushing the ice blocks to continue forward. Kanai explained that this was the only spot where they could land. Antarctic exploration regulations were formalized after World War II, and as a defeated nation, Japan was only allocated this small area. They had to figure out a way to land from there, which led to the development of ice-breaking ships in Japan. Progressing forward required breaking through the ice layer by layer. On the day Kobuchizawa's mother was swept away by a blizzard, they searched outside for a long time. Tudu actually heard Kobuchizawa's mother's last words, saying how beautiful the Antarctic sky was. Reflecting on this, Tudu shed tears by the ship's side. Eventually, the ship reached a fixed point and finally stopped on the ice. Tamaki and the others packed their equipment, and Kanai suggested they could go onto the ice surface. The four hurriedly carried their camera and headed down, but before officially setting foot on the ground, the three decided to let Kobuchizawa take the first step. Instead, Kobuchizawa grabbed their hands and jumped onto the ice surface together. The four were overjoyed. They had finally overcome numerous difficulties to reach Antarctica. Kobuchizawa's shoulders trembled slightly, and everyone thought she was missing her mother. However, Kobuchizawa was ecstatic. To get to the base, they had to take a helicopter. Yuzuki, who was afraid of heights, was relieved when they finally arrived. The luggage and passengers disembarked together, and Yuzuki then led the group on a tour of the old base. They first visited the administration building, which serves as a communal living room. Nearby were the power generation building, dormitories, and storage areas. There was also a lakeside hotel, which actually served as dormitories for the summer exploration team. However, it hadn't been maintained for 3 years, but the infrastructure was still functional. Since all four were girls, they decided to use the lakeside hotel as their dormitory. The local air was dry, causing a lot of static electricity indoors. But fortunately, there was underfloor heating, and each person had their own room. Yuzuki breathed a sigh of relief. She no longer had to listen to Tamaki talking in her sleep. After the group of four settled into the lakeside hotel, they began moving their luggage. At that moment, Yuzuki received an email from her mother, but everyone else was distracted by the penguins. They then put on masks and fully geared up to start cleaning the base, as the ultraviolet rays in Antarctica are quite strong. However, while cleaning, Yuzuki suddenly spoke up and told everyone that she had auditioned before leaving and unexpectedly passed the preliminary rounds, landing a role as a supporting actress in a morning drama. But Yuzuki felt that acting in a TV drama would take up too much time, and she wouldn't be able to hang out with the others as often. However, the other three felt that even without the TV drama, their lives wouldn't completely overlap. Tamaki also said that since they were all friends, Yuzuki could still join them whenever she was free. Yuzuki was shocked. "When did you all become such good friends?" The other three quickly reassured her that everyone was friends now and that nothing was hidden from Yuzuki. They understood her personality. She had been a child star and had grown up without friends, thinking that friendship required taking the initiative to speak up or participating in activities full of ceremonial significance. Meanwhile, the cook began preparing for the Christmas festivities, roping in Kobuchizawa and Yuzuki to bake a cake, while Tamaki and Hinata looked for a place to thaw the chicken. The cook emphasized that in such an environment, meals and activities were crucial because scientific research was a long and monotonous routine. Yuzuki was actually very anxious about friendships. Seeing everyone celebrating Christmas together, she felt it was no different from celebrating a birthday, a process she found unfair because some people remember and others forget. At this point, Kobuchizawa noticed Yuzuki's emotional struggles. Meanwhile, Yuzuki heard someone playing a song she sang, realizing she was also an actress and, considering her fans' expectations, decided to continue acting. However, she was still afraid of losing friends, so she sought out Tamaki and the others to sign a friendship contract. Kobuchizawa joked that such a thing wasn't necessary to maintain friendships, but Tamaki hugged Yuzuki tightly, understanding her insecurities about friendship, especially since Yuzuki had never had friends before, which deeply moved her. But Yuzuki noticed that Tamaki was crying and became worried, thinking she might have upset her. Hinata and Kobuchizawa explained that Tamaki was likely feeling empathetic, and that friendship is a delicate thing that can't fully be described with words. It might strengthen over time, or it could dissipate along the way. However, the freedom of friendship allows for spontaneous interactions. Yuzuki, however, didn't seem to fully grasp this. Later, she cautiously sent a message to Tamaki, who was busy preparing a surprise, and didn't reply immediately. Instead, she knocked on Yuzuki's door. Yuzuki asked if Tamaki was mad at her for not responding to her messages. Tamaki shook her head and showed Yuzuki a photo of herself with her friend Takahashi. Tamaki told Yuzuki that before departing, a childhood friend had tried to end their friendship, but she didn't accept it. Throughout the trip, she continued to send messages to this friend. Sometimes Takahashi would reply. Sometimes he would see the messages only after half a day, and sometimes he wouldn't say anything at all. However, the messages would show whether they were read or unread, and through this, Tamaki could glimpse into Takahashi's daily life. For her, this was what friendship was about. Yuzuki, due to her desire for friends, had a particular fixation on confirming friendships. Essentially, there's nothing wrong with that. At that moment, Kobuchizawa and Hinata walked in holding a cake. It turned out that they had missed Yuzuki's birthday due to seasickness. Tamaki suggested making it up to her at the base. The three celebrated Yuzuki's birthday anew. Yuzuki burst into tears. It was the first time friends had celebrated her birthday. She got so excited that she sneezed and blew out the candles. Everyone couldn't help but laugh, and Yuzuki felt much more relaxed afterward. After cleaning up the base, Tamaki's group was about to report back and record a program. Tamaki, who often removed her mask outdoors, was laughed at by the others because only the area around her eyes remained pale due to UV exposure. Her mother and sister, watching through the camera, also couldn't hold back their laughter. Meanwhile, the staff informed Hinata that they had contacted her friends. When Hinata saw three girls appear on the camera, she immediately fled from view. On the other side, Kanai and Tudu received astronomical telescope parts. The original plan was to slowly build an observatory, but investigating the stars required going to the location where Kobuchizawa's mother went missing. At the same time, Tamaki and the others began writing New Year's cards. Tamaki noticed that Hinata seemed hesitant to write to her friends. Sensing something was off, Kobuchizawa followed her and found that Hinata wasn't in the restroom, but was outside the base venting her anger. After releasing her frustration, Hinata returned to normal, picked up the camera, and went to film the seawater testing. Kobuchizawa couldn't find an opportunity to talk. After testing the seawater, the temperature dropped again in the evening. The group returned to the base by car. Here, there was no real night. Kobuchizawa asked Hinata if she had any worries, to which Hinata mentioned her lips often got dry, clearly avoiding deeper issues. Back at the base, a blizzard started outside. Tamaki was kicked out of the mahjong room by Kobuchizawa, who then dominated the game. Meanwhile, Hinata, taking a bath, stared at her phone, debating whether to delete a former friend. At this time, Toshio approached Kobuchizawa and mentioned that Hinata's friend had sent an email. Remembering Hinata's anger, Kobuchizawa hesitated, but eventually opened the email quietly. The email roughly explained Hinata's situation. Hinata had mentioned going to Antarctica and seemed to have been isolated because of it. Soon, Hinata and the others arrived in the mailroom. Hinata was upset that Kobuchizawa had read the email. Kobuchizawa apologized, explaining she saw Hinata get angry and was worried about her holding in stress. She added that she only read the beginning and didn't know the details. That night, Hinata opened up about her past. She had been a promising track athlete, and during a national competition, she felt that the seniors, being in their last year, should be chosen to compete. 3 friends told her that giving them a spot just because of their grade would be disrespectful. So, Hinata worked hard and earned her place in the competition. As a result, Hinata faced ostracism from the track team because she took a senior spot in the competition. The seniors scolded her friends, who then claimed they had already spoken to Hinata and that she was the one who couldn't read the atmosphere. Hinata felt betrayed and eventually quit the club. Rumors then spread about her in the club, blaming her for everything and forcing her to leave school. Talking about the past, Hinata could only force a smile. Yuzuki and Kobuchizawa were saddened, especially since those 3 friends messaged Hinata, proudly stating how great it was that a friend could go to Antarctica. Hinata was frustrated. Were they friends again, just because it was convenient? After learning about her past, everyone felt very sorry for Hinata, which made them somewhat distracted during the next day's scientific exploration. This was why Hinata hesitated to share her story. She didn't want to bring down the mood. Hinata explained that she came to Antarctica because it was a place with no familiar faces and scenery she had never seen before. She hoped Tamaki and the others wouldn't dwell on her past. Tamaki and Yuzuki tried to smile to ease Hinata's concerns, but Kobuchizawa was straightforward. She said that Hinata's past grievances were not meaningless, and no one should have to endure malice for no reason. Kobuchizawa reported back to the base, saying the area looked as if it were surrounded by cake. Todo mentioned that Kobuchizawa's mother had made a similar remark when she first arrived, wishing for chocolate cake. The group replenished paint at a designated spot to make it visible to satellites. That evening, Kobuchizawa took Hinata alone to fetch water and told her that if she were in Hinata's position, betrayed and then contacted only after becoming famous, she couldn't have endured it. Hinata grasped Kobuchizawa's hand, saying she understood her feelings, and hugged her tightly. Back at the base, ready to record, Hinata asked Kobuchizawa if forgiving those three friends would lighten the mood. However, she confessed that she wasn't generous enough to feel comfortable seeing them relieved. Kobuchizawa wouldn't think that way. For the first time, she overcame her fear of the camera and stepped forward to tell the three alleged friends of Hinata to stop bothering her. She added that they might think Hinata was sad about dropping out, but Hinata had moved on. Tamaki also spoke up, saying Hinata was now very happy in Antarctica, a happiness those three couldn't envy. Yuzuki hugged Hinata, affirming their true friendship. Kobuchizawa admitted she had a tough personality and wouldn't coddle them like Hinata might. She wanted those three to live with guilt, suggesting that causing others pain should have consequences. Hinata burst into tears, finally overcoming her emotional burden, and they celebrated their first New Year in Antarctica together. Kobuchizawa received sudden news during class that something was wrong. She hurried home only to learn that her mother had disappeared in Antarctica. Her life since then had been a blur. So, when Todo and the others were about to leave the base for exploration, Kobuchizawa hesitated about joining them. Ultimately, she stayed behind while Yuzuki and the others went to the site to record and film the balloon release. Kobuchizawa was left daydreaming at the base. Tamaki, worried that the environment might upset her, attempted to start a conversation but struggled to find the right words. Kobuchizawa shared with everyone that she thought reaching the longed-for Antarctica might bring her to tears, feeling the significance of the place her mother had wanted to visit. However, the reality was different. Everything looked just like the photographs, and her first comment was one of spite, criticizing those who doubted she could ever reach Antarctica. Tamaki remembered that Kobuchizawa's goal in coming to Antarctica was to see the place her mother had risked her life to visit. But upon actually arriving, she seemed to be freed from that goal, suddenly losing her sense of direction and the drive to move forward. Before the group was set to head to the location where Kobuchizawa's mother disappeared, they held a barbecue party at the base. Tamaki and the others didn't know what to say to Kobuchizawa, as it seemed inappropriate to persuade her to go. However, the cook felt that allowing Kobuchizawa some space to reflect alone was a sign of true friendship. Hearing this, Yuzuki was very happy. At that moment, Todo was drinking at Kobuchizawa's doorstep. Kobuchizawa asked her what she thought of her mother. Todo patted the stairs beside her, inviting Kobuchizawa to sit down. She said that nothing could change her mother's disappearance and presumed death. However, she came to Antarctica believing that Kobuchizawa's mother wanted her to come, although it was also her own wishful thinking. But it was this very thought that had always driven her forward. Todo mentioned that Kobuchizawa had progressed in the same way. Kobuchizawa went and retrieved the 1 million yen she had saved. She remembered every job she worked and how much money she made, the hardships of which were self-evident. She realized that everything she did was to meet her mother. So, the next day before departure, Kobuchizawa packed her bags and joined the others. They took a helicopter to the location where the snow vehicles were stationed. A specialized bulldozer led the way, clearing the path, while the snow vehicles followed, pulling supplies. Traveling on ice required attention to many details, so the snow vehicles moved slowly. Todo specifically asked Kobuchizawa to learn how to communicate with the base, noting that even adults could easily have accidents once away from the base. She emphasized the importance of survival knowledge for the four of them, and instructed them to always hold onto the ropes connecting the vehicles. Otherwise, they could be swept away by the blizzards at night. At dusk, Rare sun pillars could be seen, making it look more like the end of the world than a sunset. A blizzard started outside at night, marking the first time Kobuchizawa and her group faced such a storm directly. She asked Todo if the weather was the same the day her mother disappeared. Todo nodded, mentioning that her mother seemed to have left something behind. By the time she turned around, she was gone. The blizzard was too severe to conduct a search. Todo had to return to the vehicle and wait for the storm to end before searching. While waiting in the vehicle, she received a final message from Kobuchizawa's mother, saying she had seen a beautiful landscape. Kobuchizawa stared out the window, lost in thought. At that moment, Tamaki told her that she was glad they could come to Antarctica together. She said that with everyone around, whether it's the Arctic or Antarctica, it's a reason to be happy. Meeting Kobuchizawa had made her youth so much more exciting. Kobuchizawa felt happy and wanted to tell her mother that by following in her footsteps, she had made great friends. She didn't know if the scenery she saw was the same as her mother's, but she was about to reach the place her mother last visited. They planned to rebuild the abandoned astronomical observatory base. When Todo saw the base that had been abandoned for 3 years, she couldn't stop her tears from falling. Tamaki and the others, feeling even more sympathetic towards Kobuchizawa, rushed into the base, trying to find proof that her mother had been there. They searched tirelessly, and finally, in a corner, found a computer with a photo attached to the door. A photo of Kobuchizawa. At that moment, they realized what Kobuchizawa's mother had risked returning to the base to retrieve. After some repairs, the computer surprisingly still worked. With a nervous heart, Kobuchizawa entered the password, her birthday. When she accessed her mother's emails, every single email she had sent to her mother over the past 3 years popped up. They were dense with her longing for her mother, who would never see them. Overwhelmed by these unreachably sent feelings, Kobuchizawa sobbed uncontrollably, and Tamaki and the others outside the door couldn't hold back their tears either. Having been in Antarctica for quite some time, the summer team was about to return home. The 4 had become proficient members of the Antarctic expedition team. They even faced teasing from teammates about how well they had adapted to life in Antarctica, joking that returning to school might feel odd. This was especially true for Kobuchizawa, who was already dominating the card table next door. After finishing a day of basic work, they drove to a fixed location to collect ice. Since it was still summer in Antarctica, the exploration team had shaved the ice blocks. Kanai informed the 4 that after entering summer, Antarctica would experience polar night, but it was possible to see the aurora. Tamaki and the others had not yet seen the aurora, and today was likely their last ice collection. Tamaki felt regretful and even suggested returning next year. However, they were high school students, exams awaited at school, and Yuzuki had to return to shoot a TV drama. Despite their reluctance to leave, Tamaki and the others made a pact to return to Antarctica together for wintering in the future. Before leaving, they proposed a baseball game with the entire exploration team. Kobuchizawa, like her mother, hit Todo's pitch far into the field. She also asked Yuzuki to cut her hair short, matching her mother's hairstyle, which made Kane and Todo somewhat dazed. In the end, Todo and others held a farewell party for the 4. During their time there, the team members had come to treat them like their own children, and everyone was sad to see them go. The 4 would leave separately, but the rest of the exploration team would stay, waiting for the next Antarctic season. Kobuchizawa shared her thoughts. Initially, she came to Antarctica out of curiosity about the place her mother longed to see, her mother's resting place. Initially, Kobuchizawa had no fondness for Antarctica, but after truly arriving and being honest with her friends and herself, she grew to love her time there and vowed to return. Moved, Todo shed tears. Before leaving, Todo signed autographs for her fans, while Kanai revealed to Kobuchizawa and the others that the Antarctic exploration mission was nearly terminated. However, seeing the eager faces of the 4 during the training, Todo bit her lip, kept the truth to herself, and persevered until the plan was realized. Kobuchizawa handed over the computer left by her mother to Todo, showing she had moved on from the past. After seeing the 4 girls off in the helicopter back to the ship, Todo opened the computer and found an unsent email from Kobuchizawa's mother. Meanwhile, on their way back, Tamaki and the others were filming a farewell video when they were lucky enough to witness the aurora just before leaving. The aurora on video didn't capture a fraction of its beauty in real life, but Tamaki felt it was still wonderful. Kobuchizawa received the email about her mother forwarded by To-Do, which included a photo of the aurora, noting that the photo wasn't as good as the real thing. This time, Kobuchizawa herself had seen the aurora in Antarctica. Back in Japan, Tamaki and her 3 friends said their goodbyes and planned to travel together in the future. Kobuchizawa mentioned she had left the 1 million yen in Antarctica as a tribute to her mother's witness to her years of effort. Upon returning home, Tamaki celebrated with her family and quickly messaged to talk to Takahashi. However, Takahashi sent her a photo revealing that before Tamaki departed for Antarctica, she had stepped out of her comfort zone and gone to work in the Arctic. Although they were not in the same place, their hearts were connected.